that Nakahara Homo, then Lieutenant General of the Japanese Imperial Army and Commander-in-Chief in the Philippines of the Armed Forces of Japan at war with the United States of America and its allies, did on 6 May 1942 unlawfully refuse to grant quarter to the armed forces of the United States of America and its allies in Manila Bay, Philippines, and did thereby violate the laws of war.
You may not have heard of the greatest rescue mission in American military history. The rescue of hundreds of prisoners of war from Camp Cabanatuan, located in the Philippines on January 30th, 1945. Known as the Great Raid, the success of this mission may be overshadowed by the tragedies that led to it. It all began as America was thrust into World War II with the bombing of Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. Just 1 week later, Japan invaded the Bataan Peninsula in the Philippines, where thousands of American soldiers lived and trained with the Filipino allies. They were unprepared for the Japanese invasion, but they fought hard to defend the peninsula. It was a true test of relationship between the American soldiers and the loyal Filipino scouts that they had trained. The battle raged on for several months as supplies ran low. General Douglas MacArthur was in charge at the fight, and he repeatedly asked for additional support from the United States. Instead, he received a direct order from President Roosevelt to abandon the Philippines and focus all resources on defeating Hitler and Nazi Germany. General MacArthur left his troops as ordered and promised to return for them. After a long, hard-fought battle with little food or water and disease setting in, 75,000 American and Filipino troops surrendered to the Japanese. This is the largest surrender in U.S. history. The Japanese forces were unprepared for the large number of prisoners and were unable to transport them to the prison camps. As a result, they began the long and infamous Bataan Death March. The American and Filipino prisoners were forced to march 65 miles with no breaks and little food or water. The Japanese soldiers were intense, and they murdered many prisoners on the way to Camp O'Donnell.
But they called it a death march because of the way they died. If you stopped on the road, you were killed. If you had a malaria attack, they killed you. If you had to stop to defecate, they killed you. If you just couldn't take another step, they killed you. And how did they kill you? They'd either bayonet you to death, shoot you, or in some cases decapitate you. They did not give us water. They gave us no food.
During the first long march to Camp O'Donnell, many American prisoners died. The remaining prisoners had to travel yet again a long, treacherous march to the Camp Cabanatuan, and many did not make it. When they arrived to the camp, some prisoners were shipped off to other work camps. For the American and Filipino troops that had been captured by the Japanese, they were living in misery for 3 long years with little food or water, and most of the POWs were very sick with several diseases, including malaria. These Japanese were so cruel, they made even the sick work, and anybody who refused was tortured or murdered. After 3 long years of misery, Douglas MacArthur and his men turned the tides of the battle, and arrived at the Philippines on January 9th, 1945.
This is the voice of freedom, General MacArthur speaking. People of the Philippines, I have returned. By the grace of Almighty God, our forces stand again on Philippine soil, soil consecrated in the blood of our 2 people.
The 6th Ranger Battalion was chosen to conduct a raid on Camp Cabanatuan and rescue the hundreds of American POWs who had still remained there. They were led by Lieutenant Musey and assisted by a group of brave Filipino guerrillas. They had planned to lead an army of 30 Rangers to the enemy POW camp, and there were at least 300 enemy soldiers inside the camp, with even more soldiers nearby at the city and near the lake. January 28, 1945, they began the mission. 80 guerrillas led the army of Rangers exactly to where to go. Soon, even more guerrillas joined in. The plan was to have groups of Army Rangers set up along the outside perimeter of the camp. Then, one group would start off the battle by shooting any enemies in sight. Meanwhile, the other soldiers would take out more guards and save the POWs. The guerrillas planned to set up a roadblock on a bridge with hidden explosives and machine guns, although in order to get to the front lines without being spotted, Army Rangers would have to crawl almost a mile. Even then, they could not get close enough without being spotted. A particular guerrilla leader, Captain Juan Pajota, would have crucial to the success of the mission. He had been trained a Filipino scout prior to the war and had since formed a guerrilla unit consisting of prior scouts and new recruits. At the suggestion of Captain Pahota, the Army Rangers ordered a plane to fly extremely low, close to the ground, distracting everybody inside the camp. This was the perfect strategy to divert the enemy's attention and allow Army Rangers to move in. The battle began as planned. 2 Rangers rushed into the gate and attempted to shoot the lock, but were met by enemy fire. They fired back and blew open the lock on the gate, and Army Rangers were able to enter the camp. As this is happening, guerrillas set off the bomb that was planted earlier, but left enough of the bridge for the Japanese to cross on foot. The guerrillas were prepared and waiting, and they gunned down every Japanese soldier that tried to cross. Hundreds of Japanese troops were killed in the tournament raid. The Army Rangers rushed into the barracks where the POWs were being held. Some of the prisoners were disoriented and didn't recognize or trust them initially. 511 American POWs were rescued, but faced another long march to safety. After several hours, they reached American lines, and although this battle started off as a tremendous fail, it became an even bigger success. On the same day, a war correspondent by the name of Carl Maddens wrote, "Every American child of coming generations will know the 6 Rangers, for a prouder story has never been written."
Sentence. Upon secret written ballot, 2/3 or more of the numbers concurring, the commission sentences you to be shot to death with musketry.